So the MG5 SIAC motors, that car is a car that people want to buy, and they are everywhere in the UK. They've just magically appeared everywhere, and they're not perfect, but they're quite nice looking. They're smart inside. They're an estate car, and that's what people kind of want. And they're just popping up absolutely everywhere. And that's a Chinese car. And yep, they're just obliterating the European competitors. The European car industry, and I think the US car industry, for very similar reasons, although there are some differences, is in crisis. I think it's quite a reasonable description. Self-inflicted crisis, but it ain't looking good. So this is where I go, well, what is this actually about? And I think you can kind of just dwell on this crisis. Like, it's a crisis. It's multifaceted, Victoria. But yeah, talk to us about your perceptions of this, both, the US, but I dare say, quite a lot about the European. In fact, there is a lot of crossover between the two, right? What is the car industry crisis going on?
Yeah, well, it's just the Chinese market is well handled by Chinese automakers, and that was over 1 billion people they were expecting to sell cars to, and that market's gone. U.S. buyers and European buyers don't have money, and they can't afford to keep up demand because we destroyed the Fordist model of capitalism. Yeah. We replaced it with Thatcher Reagan neoliberalism. Now nobody can afford to buy anything, and they're like, oh my God, who's going to buy cars? And so we need more revenue, and we've got to get it from somewhere. So we should invent a way to force something on people they don't want. Yep. Once again, the answer is late stage capitalism. The solution, of course,
is rentier economy shit. This is it. So this is a slide that I nicked back from a fantastic episode we did with Thea Riafrancos talking about mineral use relating to lithium specifically, but also, of course, within the book, I talk about cobalt particularly, and I'm conscious that cobalt isn't necessarily in all modern batteries now. It is diversifying a bit.
There's other ways that you can kind of go around it. A lot of automakers are trying to get off of it. China actually sits on a lot of the patents for batteries that don't use it because they were earlier, again, like you pointed out, they were better with, kind of capitalizing on battery tech early on. But even without that, there's still problems.
It takes, and the thing about infinitely increasing the complexity of these vehicles, that Peugeot 107 reminder, the internal combustion engine vehicle, and indeed EVs, arguably even more so, can be simple and should be simple. They should do the thing that people need them to do, and have things like aircon and a radio, and there are things that make that experience nice, but they don't have to be infinitely complexifying and using all the minerals in the process. We have finite resources to build these things, and as you pointed out earlier, finite resources to power the data centers that will make the driverless rubbish work. And
as a slight bit of optimism, which is unusual for me, but we have a startup in the US called Slate that wants to sell little mini pickup trucks, basically
the Slates. I do know about these.
They're not actually that small, but it is kind of it's sort of an antidote to sort of the Cybertruck Hummer EV out of the wall, and I don't have plugs outside to charge an EV with. That's kind of the thing, is your buyer base for these childless targeted sort of small city runabouts do not have the money for them. And so the only solution is just to keep building. The Hummer EV is kind of my poster child for the waste and excess of modern vehicles, but it's got 300 miles of range. It's got a battery that weighs as much as the MR2 on the cover of the book I shot.
Oh my God.
It's 2,800 pounds, the battery alone. Because they wouldn't even publish numbers. I think it was 180 kilowatt hours. But GM notably was so ashamed of this, they wouldn't tell you. It has the worst efficiency rating of any vehicle ever sold with a battery going in the modern era. Because it's just a statement piece.
Yeah, I was going to say, the people who buy those are the same vibe people who buy Cybertrucks. They don't.
Exactly.
The point
it really was exactly that. It was a response to the Cybertruck, and both of them are really big and wasteful. Anyway.
Yeah, horrifying. So there's this whole we have a planet, we have limited resources. This is bad. Again, what problem are they solving? The point I make. Well, this is true for EVs as well. EVs are the future for cars, but they are, EVs are not the future of cars are not the future of transport. And this is, whether it's fossil fuel, whether it's electric vehicles, or whether it's driverless cars. Well, actually, what's funny with the driverless cars is if you give them the benefit of the doubt of them actually potentially working, imagine this traffic situation, but worse. Because, as we said, the ideal model is all of the cars are driving at any given moment. So that just breaks our society. It just breaks it even more than cars already have. And we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, actually, that all of the and again, I very specifically talk about this in the book. The car-dependent society that the Western world has built in the interwar and then post-war years is a major contributor to today's populism. The isolation that the car specifically has driven is the cause of a lot of the social and political problems we have today. And driverless cars will amplify that, right?
Oh yeah, let's take the one person you might talk to if you're like a
Yeah.
wealthy person getting shuttled around, your cab driver, and just remove them from the equation too.
Yeah.
Everywhere I go, it should be a sterile bubble in which I only speak to other people in my class exclusively. I never want to interact with a person poorer than me ever again. Is kind of the underlying message of all of American society.
Yeah.
Driverless cars are just kind of like a response to that. Whereas, like, I take the bus and it works great. It's not self-driving. There is a bus driver on board who I do usually say thank you to.
Yeah.
And so I guess in that way it's kind of less convenient than a driverless car where
Yeah,
the collective unconscious takes me to my destination. But like, it works really well. The bus drivers are usually really good at what they're doing. They can get through
yeah.
traffic really well. They don't get disabled by like a traffic cone like put on the hood of the bus. They like know how to navigate through, pretty good at avoiding cyclists. Shocking that like paying a person
and much cheaper than. Well, it's funny. There have been several driverless bus trials in the UK recently, and they're it's an even more laughable thing because there still has to be a driver in there because obviously there does, but it's again like it really exaggerates what problem is this solving. It's like this is solving no problem. You're making buses more impossible for local authorities to afford, and you're taking the device that you will never get a better computer that drives a vehicle than a driver who you've already got in the vehicle.
I mean, it's great if you're looking to do like a capital strike against kind of trained drivers who are in a union, and you can just get some person to sit there, and then you can send him to jail when the bus runs into somebody. Like kind of worked out with the Uber self-driving test here. But that's really like, if you look at it from a human use perspective, it's not good for any living person that like isn't part of the ownership class.
No, and nobody's winning for this. And what's funny is that, as we've talked about earlier, the automotive industry isn't winning for the driverless car thing because it's costing them an arm and a leg. It's just baffling.
Yeah, no, well, I mean that's GM. It's just kind of like, we're done.
Yeah, and so the other thing is like it's going to make our street space worse. This is an article from a while back that I talked about in RailNata, which is Arup, which is a UK engineering consultancy, but they're if you like the like Apple of of engineering consultancies. Like they're the soft, touchy feely, like nice sort of they see themselves as the nice engineering consultancy, and they're talking about there's a couple of articles here, and they're talking about like changing street space to have like, well, we can illuminate the pavement and tell people where the pavement stops and the cars start, and it's like, oh, what you mean is just more space to choose where cars go, and also, by the way, a much less inclusive and accessible roadscape as well.